tag that. And then it goes to the then it goes to the yeah. Like cycles all around like half step. Last one's up. So 5. Oh yeah, just melody wise. Oh yeah, yeah.
Hi, everyone. Hello. Hi. Welcome, everyone. My name, we'll get started. Cool. Hi, everybody. My name is Harriet Hoover, and I'm the Associate Department Head of Foreign Languages and Fine Arts. And welcome. Thanks, everyone, for attending today. And thanks to the Wake Tech Student Activities and Student Government Association for sponsoring this event. Let's Talk Jazz is one of the many interactive experiences presented this month that amplify, educate, and honor the African American voice, experience, and cultural contributions. Coming up, we also have an artist talk with Jalen Jackson on February 21st, and that's in the library, and also the art of storytelling through hip hop, and that's on February 22nd. So I encourage you to check out the Student Activities website for more information. So I'm thrilled to introduce our guest artist today, and I'll start with Brandon Mitchell. Originally from Washington, D.C., Brandon Mitchell is an active vibraphonist in the North Carolina music scene. He has a BA in Music Performance from Elon University and a Master of Music in Jazz Studies from North Carolina Central University. As the owner of Small House Entertainment, he has collaborated with many different artists and toured internationally. He is currently the director of the University Jazz Ensemble at Elon University and a former Wake Tech instructor of music. So we're delighted to have you all here today, and welcome. Thanks again.
Check, 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 check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Can you guys hear me all the way in the back? Awesome. Excellent. All right, well, thank you all, Wake Tech. We are super excited to be here. As Harriet has mentioned, my name is Brandon Mitchell. I was an instructor here for the past few years, so I know some of you all may have seen me around campus before, but we're super excited to be here today to talk jazz, okay? So I figured, I've done this a few times through different colleges, universities, middle schools, high schools. I always find the best way to kind of break the ice is really just for us to kind of play, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and start by playing a tune for you guys, and then we'll open the floor up and talk a little more after that, all right? This first one we're gonna play is called Chitlins Con Carnes. Thank y'all, ladies and gentlemen. I want to go ahead and introduce the band that we have here with us today. Now, currently at the moment, I told you all that I was teaching here at Wake Tech for the past few years. I'm currently over at Elon University directing the jazz ensemble there. So I decided to bring a few of my colleagues over from Elon to join us as well. So could you all please give a big round of applause for Andy Powell? Today, Andy Powell will be playing the upright bass, holding down the foundation for us. Okay? On guitar over here, we have Chip Newton. I was learning jazz and jazz history and everything from Chip, right? I was in his class when I was a student at Elon as well. So definitely a walking textbook and a bunch of information that he has here. So we're here to talk jazz today, and I think this is a very fitting moment seeing that it is February, right? It is Black History Month as well. And when we talk about jazz music, it's so important to the culture of African Americans. In this country, a lot of the music that we have, whether some of your favorite music is rock and roll, country, right, blues, hip hop, rap, a lot of it tends to stem from the blues and from jazz music, okay? So it's a super important part of our history that I feel like a lot of people we need to make a better effort to kind of understand, which is why we're here to kind of talk jazz and to bring that about the younger generations, okay? So raise your hand. I just want to do a quick survey. Raise your hand if you listen to jazz, just kind of regularly. Okay, we got some people in here. Just randomly, can we blurt out a few jazz artists? I just want to see who y'all know. Miles. Rollins, Coltrane. Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, we're definitely naming artists. We're definitely listening for sure. It's one of those type of musics, back in the 1930s, right, when swing music and when big band music was really popular, that was the commercial music of the day, right? So when you go and turn on the radio, these were the groups, the Duke Ellingtons, the Count Basies of the world. These were the popular groups, right? When we think about jazz nowadays, we don't tend to really think about it as the popular type of music, right? We think more towards pop, more towards new age hip hop and everything. But it's just such a different type of music that without listening to it, it's kind of hard to understand, okay? So what I want to do is we're going to play a few more tunes for you all, but I want to help to give us a little bit of a foundation, okay, to make it easier for you all to follow along with what it is that we're doing, okay? So the first thing that we need to talk about is, what is a chorus? Now, when I say a chorus, usually we think of it as kind of like the hook of the song, right? In jazz, we are saying the chorus is one time through the form, okay? So we talk about 12-bar blues. Anybody familiar with the 12-bar blues? Right? Whether it's the church blues, rock blues, jazz blues, it's all universal, right? But with the 12-bar blues, it's super nice because it's always going to be 12 measures, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. So once we get to the end of those 12 measures, that's one chorus done, and then we're back at the top of the form. So for us as jazz musicians, that's super important because that allows us to be able to keep up with each other and know where we are in the music. So sometimes I know it could look kind of magical, like, wow, how do these people know what's going on? But form is really king. So if you're able to follow that form, it becomes a little bit easier to follow along, okay? So we're going to play a 12-bar blues here in a second, but a few of these other things that we're going to try to show and demonstrate for you guys today. Of course, in jazz music, improvisation is a very big key, and we heard a little bit of improv from Chip and Andy and myself here on that previous tune. So we're going to take some solos, and then maybe halfway through the tune or so, Andy and we're going to start to trade. Okay, now when I say trade, usually it could be trade 4s or trade 2s, trade 8, but we're going to trade how many measures we actually play. So he may play in solo for 4 measures, then they'll stop and I'll play in solo for 4 measures, right? And we'll kind of bounce back and forth. But this is really going to help us to be able to start to communicate with one another, okay? Jazz is such a living type of music that we really do get the chance to communicate and to play off of one another as we go. Okay, so we want to go ahead and play a 12-bar blues for you all. I'm going to try and make it super obvious whenever we hit the top of the form, right? And whenever we finish one chorus, you'll probably hear a big old crash over here on this cymbal, all right? So let's check this one out. Chip, what do you want to play? Bag's Groove? All right, y'all. We're going to play a tune called Bag's Groove by vibraphonist Milt Jackson. One, two, one, two, three. All right, thank you all, ladies and gentlemen. So as we said, that was a tune called Bags Groove. Now, some of you all may have noticed, I prefaced it by saying, yeah, we're going to play the blues, we want to check it out, but I did not say what tune we were going to play. What's the actual song? So I looked over at Chip and said, what do you want to play? Right? Now, that's kind of a part of the culture of jazz music. We go about making sure that we feel super comfortable learning what we call jazz standards, okay? And this is just the standard repertoire for all jazz musicians. I think, we have a fancy name for it in jazz, but pretty much every genre of music is going to have their standard repertoire of music, right? Whether you're talking about Brazilian music, I know gospel music for anybody who may go to church. I'm sure there's even some more classic country tunes that people will consider like standards for the genre, right? So we're just talking about those tunes that everybody pretty much knows and that has been made very famous and is performed pretty much all the time by some of these most famous jazz musicians that we have. So there, as we were playing, like I said, every 12 bars that went by, that's one chorus, right? So most of the time I try to make sure I kind of hit that crash to help signal us when we're hitting the top of the form. But you could really hear how Andy and I were starting to trade between each other, right? And now we're really trying to play off of each other with our ideas. So Andy may play something, and just like a regular conversation, I'm not going to just repeat exactly what I hear back to him. I'm gonna try to find a way to respond, right, with my own type of sentence. So if he gives a question, I could kind of give an answer. Right? So we did trading fours, and we did 4 measures at a time. We also did trading courses or trading 12s, where he did one entire course by himself, then I did one entire course by myself. So these are all just different ways that jazz musicians like to go about trying to help communicate with each other as we play and as we perform. I want to try another form for you guys, okay? So like we said, the 12-bar blues, that is very much jazz. Every jazz musician that you know will always play a 12-bar blues. A lot of times, I mean, you guys could probably, vouch for this. We like to open up with 12-bar blueses, right? It's very universal language. It's something we know people are going to love. It allows us to really kind of stretch out with our improvisation, right, and be able to communicate with you guys as the audience as well. But this next form that we're going to do, they call this 32-bar form, okay? Now what's going to happen is we're going to have 4 different sections in total. So we'll have an A section, and Chip will play a beautiful melody for us, okay? That A section is going to repeat itself. So you'll hear that same melody 2 times in a row. The third section, we're going to call that the B section or the bridge, okay? And this is where we're going to really get some different type of material. Think about just like the bridge in a regular pop song or a song on the radio, right? Usually that section of the song is pretty different. But to kind of make everything stick back together, he's going to play the A one more time, okay? So we're going to go A, B, and then A. So once again, this is a very popular form for jazz musicians, and they tend to use it in a form that we have called rhythm changes, okay? Based off of the famous song, I Got Rhythm. Jazz musicians have found countless different melodies to be able to put over this chord progression and to put over this form and kind of be able to make it their own. So I will turn and I will pose the same question to Chip. What you want to play? Oleo. All right, y'all. This is Oleo. One, two, 1, 2, So I'm going to talk a little personally here for a second. But one of the reasons why I love jazz music is because nothing is truly planned, right? You listen to a pop song, right? Or if you go to a Taylor Swift concert, listen, I'm not picking on Taylor, but say you go to a Taylor Swift concert, most of the time, the songs that you hear performed at the concert are going to be played the same way on the album, right? Because that's what everybody is so used to hearing. That's what we're accustomed to hearing. But in jazz music, it's almost kind of the nature of it to try to be as creative as you can and try to create your own variations and your own versions, okay? So in one genre of music where it may be frowned upon, in another genre of music, it's definitely something that's celebrated, right? So I've played Olio hundreds of times in my career for sure. Every single time it's played, it's always going to be something different, right? Because once again, we're just trying to listen. We're trying to play off of one another and really trying to communicate with each other as we go. Yeah, please, Chip.
And I'm nowhere near as eloquent as Brandon here, but I just want to talk a little bit about the last piece we played called Olio. It had the same chord progression as I Got Rhythm by George Gershwin, so 32 bars, popular song format that was really originated with Broadway shows from the time. They were all like 32 measures long. But the composer of that melody was Sonny Rollins, and he's fortunately still with us. He's, I think, in his early 90s now. He's retired. But he still does YouTube videos, and he posts regularly, and he imparts a lot of wisdom to young jazz musicians. Even today, he's still a teacher. And one of the things Sonny Rollins did when he came on the scene, and really in the late 50s was when he was really getting a lot of notice, but he changed the nature of jazz improvisation. Instead of like, you know, Charlie Parker and some others that were doing great things and reflecting the harmonies when they would improvise, Sonny Rollins came up with the idea. It was like, well, I don't need to blow through all these chord changes with all these long melodies if I don't want to. I can do that, and he certainly could do that. But he could take little motives like a composer would do, and he would play maybe 2 or 3 notes, and then he'd make the 2 or 3 notes fit over the next harmony, the next chord change. And I was trying to do that a little in my improvisation as a nod to Sonny, but he still is the master of that, is motivic improvisation. So he's really great. If you've never heard Sonny Rollins, lots of great music. One other thing I need to plug too, since I'm on the topic, is there is currently an online petition in the city of New York to rename the Williamsburg Bridge to Sonny Rollins Bridge in honor of him, because Sonny actually gave up his career in jazz for about 2 or 3 years. He just quit playing, performing, and he went to practice, and he went to the Williamsburg Bridge, and he became kind of famous for doing that. Even a guy at his high level, professional jazz musician, felt like he needed to still practice, and so he did that. So there's a petition online. I can't remember what the name of it is, but if you typed in Sonny Rollins Bridge Petition New York, I'm sure it would come up. And it's almost to, I think, like 20,000 signatures. And once it gets to there, then it's going to go to the city of New York to rename it the Sonny Rollins Bridge. So if you want to be pro-jazz, I encourage you to check that out. Sign the petition. All right, that's it from me.
That's actually pretty awesome. I did not know that myself, so I will go personally find that petition and try to sign it as well. Absolutely. So guys, jazz music, right, when we talk about the genre, I think it's hard to really classify and categorize it all into one sound, right? So I know a lot of times, and I'm speaking generally here, when people think of jazz music, they tend to think of this. Ding, ding-a-ling, 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 ding, right? It's kind of like that typical, stereotypical jazz pattern. And that definitely is a part of jazz for sure because of these swung rhythms that we're trying to play, right? When I say swung rhythms, I'm talking about the difference between something like this, very straight, right? Any musicians in the room, if you've ever played, these are just like regular eighth notes, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and boom. Right? But in jazz music, instead of keeping that eighth note very straight, we like to swing it, right? So those ands that I'm saying, I'm actually going to push that back even a little bit further, okay? So instead of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, I'm going to go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So now it almost has a little bit of momentum rolling forward, right? Almost like we're going to fall off the cliff going ahead. And that is that swing rhythm in jazz that we like to talk about a lot of times. So it was something that started back in very earlier jazz, like we were saying back in the Duke Ellington, Count Basie days of the swing era. But this was something that continued to develop kind of through the Charlie Parker bebop era, right? Through a lot of the Sonny Rollins post-bop eras. And these swing rhythms, that is a part of jazz, right? Nowadays, that is not the only rhythms that we really consider to be a part of jazz. So we could talk swing, okay? We could talk bebop as kind of a whole different genre in itself, but we also have things like Latin jazz, right? Soul jazz, free jazz, okay? Cool jazz. So it's all of these other subgenres that fall under this umbrella of jazz, okay? So when I hear people say, yeah, I don't like jazz music, I say, no, don't say that, right? Because everybody has a certain type of jazz that I think they could get into and that they like, but it's really going to be up to you guys to see if you can find that genre, okay? So I want to play another tune for you guys here. I know some of you all that may be in the African American history class may have come across talking about the Harlem Renaissance. And one of the most important artists on the jazz front that we had going through the Harlem Renaissance was indeed Duke Ellington, okay? Raise your hand if you ever heard of Duke Ellington before. Okay, definitely one of those famous names in jazz. Even if you don't know his music too much, usually people have a pretty good idea of who he is. So Duke would really help to change the game with jazz because he would present these big band concerts that was not like any big band that you were seeing before. Okay, so instead of them just kind of, you know, your 15, 20 guys on the stage and everybody's playing the tune, Duke started bringing in all these weird instruments, right? Maybe some of these instruments we see in classical settings, right? Started to get these really weird sounds and tones coming out of this band, but they were absolutely beautiful, okay? So it was definitely kind of a different approach to this big band writing that he had. And he was just such a masterful composer that a lot of his tunes will end up becoming jazz standards that we play nowadays. Okay, so one of the tunes that I want to play for you all next was a tune written by Duke. This one will be considered a ballad. Okay, so you're going to notice that we're going to slow the tempo down and almost treat this more like a love song, if you will. But the name of this one is In a Sentimental Mood. Thank you all. So, in a sentimental mood, definitely a jazz standard. You will hear that one played at a lot of different concerts or jam sessions that you go to. But once again, the writing of Duke Ellington was so masterful that he could make something as beautiful as that song, but then as something as, we'll say, interesting as this next tune that we're about to play, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and play another Duke tune for you guys here. This one is called Caravan. I want you all to notice that as we play this one, you're actually gonna hear us kind of bounce back and forth between that whole swing rhythm and that straight rhythm that I mentioned earlier, okay? A song like Caravan has a lot of Afro-Cuban sources, and that's kind of where this part of the music tends to come from. So you're gonna hear a lot of these more Latinese type of beats coming from me and Andy to kind of set this groove for us. And then we'll check out and see this awesome writing that Duke has, okay? So this one is called Caravan. You wanna set it up, Andy? Thank you all. Hey, can we give it up for Chip Newton on the guitar? Personally, I am a notoriously bad guitar player. I cannot play guitar to save my life. So whenever I watch this guy play, I'm always pretty amazed. Can we give it up for Andy Powell on the bass? So I just want to take a second and kind of talk about, you know, as jazz musicians, how do we function? Like, what is our functions, right? When I think of listening to jazz bands or jazz combos, I'm almost thinking about it as like listening to a sport or watching a sports team, right? So if you think about a football team, there's usually going to be 11 men on the field. And if for some reason there's a guy missing, well, now you're at a really bad disadvantage, right? So kind of the same thing tends to happen to jazz. We all really rely upon one another in order to truly make this music happen. So I just want to kind of pass the mic around, let these fellas talk a little bit, and can you guys kind of just tell us, you know, what is your instrument, and then what is the function of your instrument within this music?
Hey everybody, my name's Andy. I play bass. The bass is a great instrument in the jazz band. Basically, I'm responsible for the low notes, as you guys probably heard. When we think about jazz, I like to use the analogy of a house, right? The bass really just provides a nice foundation for everything. So my responsibilities include rhythmic responsibilities, right? I need to communicate with the drummer, and you know, together we're largely responsible for the time of the group or the feel of the group. So we kind of provide a nice rhythmic backbone together as a unit. I'm also responsible for a foundational part of the harmony as well. Like Brandon was saying, as we play through these songs, we're actually going through a series of chords or harmonies, usually defined by the melody of whatever tune we happen to be playing. And it's my job as the bass player to outline the root of those. For those of you who are familiar with chords, if we were playing a C major chord, guess what note I'm playing? It's C, right? Okay. So I'm responsible for playing those, but you may hear me playing other notes. I try to connect the roots together a little bit to basically create a nice little melody on the low end that provides a nice counterpoint with whatever is happening on the upper end of our band. So usually when you're listening, you'll hear me playing quarter notes, right? I love ba-doom, doom, 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 da-doom, da-doom, doom, 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 right? Okay. Nothing beats a good quarter note, so I'm really responsible for the rhythmic aspect of the band, part of the feel, and also, the harmony as well, providing a nice foundation for everybody. So, cool.
Okay. So, the function of the guitar in jazz. Well, there were always great guitarists from the very beginning of the art form. If you go back to listening to guitarists like Eddie Lang and Lonnie Johnson in the 1920s, and they played acoustic guitars. This was before we had electric instruments. And my guitar is an acoustic electric. It's a hollow body, just like an acoustic, so I can play it acoustically if I want, but it really shines if I have it plugged into the amplifier. Guitar was kind of lost for several decades in jazz to always being kind of in the background because it acoustically is not very loud. It couldn't compete with the trumpets and the saxophones and all of that. But in about 1939, a man named Charlie Christian, was originally from Texas, was heard playing an electrified instrument by the Gibson Company. And he was able to play lines that sounded like a saxophone. And it allowed the guitar to move up from the rhythm section, where they just basically been playing quarter notes, to actually playing melodies with horns. And that was a revolutionary thing at the time, having an electric guitar in your band. It was like Flash Gordon or something to those musicians. They were like, that's really weird, but kind of cool too. In fact, Brandon and I just did a concert last weekend at the Sharp 9 Gallery in Durham, celebrating the music of Benny Goodman, Lionel Hampton, and Charlie Christian. So I got to be in the Charlie Christian chair. In a more modern setting like this, I'm able to actually play electrified, and I can kind of play the single note melodies if I want, as in a horn player might do, but I can also play like a pianist. So I can play a line and then play a couple chord stabs, is what we call them, to sort of emulate the sound of a pianist too. I'll never be able to get this amount of notes that a piano player could get, but I can reflect what a piano player could play harmonically if I know where my notes are and what my ear tells me to do. That's really the biggest thing about playing jazz, is that we're all listening together, we're responding together, we're having a conversation without words. And we don't even know what it's going to sound like until we start playing it, right? That's what makes it so special. It's immediate that way. So I guess that's it, again, from me. I'll turn it back over to Brandon.
So thank you, Andy and Chip, for that. Just to tell you guys just a little bit about the drum set. I'm sure you all are pretty familiar with it, even in different musical settings, so like in rock settings as well, right? So the drum set is definitely an American instrument for sure, and it's kind of like the combination of all of these instruments together is what truly makes the drum set. So in a lot of like kind of earlier jazz and even in other forms of music, you may hear a lot of these instruments be played separately, right? So we may have just the snare drummer playing, or maybe just one person playing the bass drum, or maybe someone, right, playing crash cymbals and crashing them together. But we were able to kind of put all of this in one, and through a lot of practicing and coordination, one can actually be able to find a way to, you know, make this amalgamation of different instruments actually sound pretty decent. So it's my function in the band to make sure that along with the bassist, I'm helping to establish and keep time, okay? So we are what we call, all three of us, we're what we call the rhythm section in music, okay? So even if we had a full big band up here, let's just say we had 4 saxophones, 4 trumpets, 4 trombones, and then the 3 of us. Well, we will still serve as the rhythm section, okay? It is our job to make sure there is always basically a sound of music happening. We are always moving, always some type of chords being played, time, rhythms being kept, and that is the foundation of the music. So then from there, our saxophone players, our trumpet players, right, they could really start to build these melodies on top of it. So my main job is to really make sure I keep that time nice and steady, right, develop that groove or develop that pocket, as drummers like to say. And then the other job that I have is to really help color the band, okay? So by the use of different cymbals, you notice that one of them is a little bit drier, right? But then the other one is way more like resonant and a little more wet. Right, so I have all of these different cymbals and drums that basically we can just create different colors and create different textures for the music to make the music a little bit more exciting as well. So we are almost about out of time here. I wanted to get one more tune in before we open up the floor for questions, okay? So this last tune I want to play for you guys, one of the big things here that we want to make sure we accomplish today is to make sure that you all know about all these kind of different subgenres of jazz. Once again, everybody loves jazz. You just kind of have to find your place in it, right? So this next one that we're going to check out was a pretty popular tune in the soul jazz movement, and really kind of helped to connect this idea of jazz music and things like R&B and soul that would really come up to, a little bit later in the late 60s and the early 70s as well. So in this one, you are going to hear me play what drummers call a backbeat, which you all are super accustomed to hearing in music, right? That's basically, that snare is going to be on 2 and 4. So I'm going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, down, 1, right? Usually like the hand clap in the song or the snare drum in the song, whatever it is. So we're actually going to be playing some rather straighter rhythms, and you're going to hear this backbeat very similar to almost like a rock or like a funk song in a sense, okay? So this one that we're going to play is called Sunny and was made very popular by jazz guitarist Pat Martino. So we hope you enjoy. All right, thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we're so happy, we're so excited to be here. When I was an instructor here, I got the chance to do this for some of my classes, my jazz appreciation and music appreciation classes, but it's so awesome to see some of the rest of the student body coming out here, and you know, we're just happy. We're just happy to have you guys here. Hopefully you all are enjoying the music. Hopefully you all feel like you have learned something today. We want to leave these last few minutes here and open up the floor for questions, okay? So if if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. I'll try to, point to you. Go ahead, stand up and ask your question. You can ask whatever you want. If it's about jazz music, if it's about music in general, if it's about the life of musicians, okay? I think it's safe to say we all definitely live the life of musicians, which isn't always necessarily a normal life. So total free game. I think we have about five minutes or so, okay? So right here in the blue shirt, what's your question, sir?
So you said there was a bunch of different subgenres. What type of subgenre would like Louis Armstrong, John Coltrane, or Monjo Mall be?
Okay, so now with some of these superstars that you just named, right, we see that history isn't always super black and white, right? So with people like Coltrane, although he started in the bebop era, we saw that he would end up moving into the hard bop era as well, and even making a really big splash on the avant-garde as well too. So some of these musicians tend to fall into different categories. I think Louis Armstrong is probably the safest to say that he truly fell in like Dixieland jazz and helped to transition us into that swing era of jazz. Okay. Yeah, no doubt. Up top. Hey.
I have a different bass player. How long have you been playing,
This instrument right here?
the bass?
Good question. So, here, let me grab this microphone. So, good question. So, my musical journey is a little bit different than most. I actually started playing piano. That was my first instrument, and I started playing when I was about 5. And I started playing trombone in the jazz band when I was in middle school. And I got, I enjoyed the trombone, but my friends, of course, were starting a rock band, and they had already bought guitars and drums, so I bought an electric bass. So I started playing that around middle school, probably around 7th grade, and then I didn't pick up the upright until I was 20 years old, so I've only been playing for 13 years now, if that dates me at all. But yeah, about 13 years on this instrument, but bass since I was about, like, 13, something like that. So, yeah,
Up top.
Yes, I would actually ask another question on bass. It's actually, how often do you see electric basses versus the upright bass?
Great question. So, when it comes down to electric versus upright bass in the idiom, it is all about those subgenres that Brandon was talking about. So whatever instrument I need for the specific subgenre I'm playing, I'm going to bring. Typically, I'm going to see upright in more of that traditional jazz, bebop, swing, even like the Latin jazz setting to an extent, although I do play in a Brazilian band and I use my electric bass in that. If we're dealing with any more of this like soul jazz, jazz fusion, those sorts of things, that's typically when you'll see the electric bass kind of thrown into the mix. So, talking about people like, Miles, when he kind of transitioned into his later periods, he was going to have the electric bass in there. People like Al Di Meola, Chick Corea, even to an extent, is going to have electric. We got Return to Forever, the Chick Corea electric band. Stuff like that. So it really just depends on the genre that we are specifically dealing with when it comes to jazz. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Young lady right here. Yep.
What was the name of the last song that you played?
The name of that last song that we played was Sunny, S-U-N-N-Y. And the most famous recording of it that we tend to probably hear is by Pat Martino. No problem. Yep.
What is the coolest place that you performed at?
Oh, okay. I think we should pass this one along. She said, what is the coolest place we've performed at? So I think for me, the coolest place I've ever performed was in Italy, in front of the Duomo of Florence. So they have a holiday over there called Notte Bianca, which is also known as the White Night. And I mean, there are thousands of people kind of like flock the piazzas and things. And we had the opportunity to perform as a jazz quintet out there on the main stage. So for me, that's probably definitely the coolest performance.
Yeah, that's a tough one. There have been a lot. Definitely some of the performances that Brandon and I did out in Colorado with our funk band, those have been some of my favorites for sure. But I think my other favorite was I got the opportunity to go overseas to the country of Georgia, to the city of Batumi, to participate in a global arts consortium, and we did a lot of performances there. There was this one that was in the town square, and there was thousands of people out there just all from the city, just kind of hanging out out, and it was just a really cool vibe. So I think that one was probably one of my favorites as well. So.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to think about the coolest place. I guess one of the high points was when I played a gig in New York City, probably the only gig I have in New York City to my name right now, but a tenor saxophone player asked me to come up, and we played quartet, and it was his regular gig right off of Times Square in a little place called the Dervish. And one man that ended up showing up to our gig was Sean Penn, the actor, which was kind of neat to see him digging our tunes. The other place that I've played that's really one of my favorites is YouTube, which is a funny thing to say. But in another lifetime, I played music on cruise ships. I was the staff guitarist, and my roommate at the time, he played jazz accordion, which is not typically thought to be a jazz instrument, but he was really good at it. And during the pandemic, he contacted me from Ukraine, where he's from, and he knew an electric bass player in the style of Jaco Pastorius over there. So we put together a little pandemic YouTube video from across the miles, and it worked out really well. So that was fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we got time for just about one last question. Let me go ahead and get up top, please. Yep.
For the guitarist, how would you get into bass electric?
How I got into electric guitar, jazz, yeah. I first heard a guitarist named Wes Montgomery when I was freshman in college, and it totally flipped my mind around. Up to that point, I liked blues guitar and rock guitar, but I'd never heard anyone play guitar in the style of Wes Montgomery. And hearing his version of actually we played Caravan, and I still don't play it like he did. He's just a master. He's right up there, I think, with Louis Armstrong and Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, all those. And he adapted that bebop language and put it on this instrument. But that was the tune. When I had a cassette, I popped it in, and I heard Duke Ellington's Caravan played by Wes Montgomery with a big band behind him. And I think that was the kind of the entry point. And then since then, I've just spent my life trying to learn his language. And I never will, because there's only one Wes Montgomery, but I like to try.
True. Right. It's the forever journey of a jazz musician. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have to kind of conclude there and wrap it up. We're going to start to break down up here. If you have any more questions and you got a little time, feel free to come up and just kind of talk to us, right? We'll be hanging out here. Special thanks to Harriet Hoover and all of the staff here at Wake Tech for making this happen. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you, Harriet. And I really hope that we can kind of come back in the future and get a chance to do this again, okay? So I just want to leave you guys with one last note, and that is to make sure that you all are supporting local music, all right? If you love music, it doesn't even have to be jazz, whatever type of music it is, but understand that it is people like us up here and these professional musicians who we do make a living, and it's through your support why we are able to do this, okay? So if you want to learn any more about me or any more about my music, just feel free to Google Brandon Mitchell Music, or you'll see it pop right up. Otherwise, we'll be hanging out up here. So you guys enjoy the rest of the week, have a happy weekend, and we hope to see y'all soon. Absolutely. Take care. We could say there's more general ones that are used, so definitely these instruments up here, piano, and then once you get into the horns of things, we're talking like saxophones typically, yeah, right, a lot of clarinets will get used, trumpets, trombones, but on the brass side of things, it's really trumpets and trombones. Then you'll see some like